welcome to the lecture on infancy and childhood social development. We have been talking a lot about the physical development, prenatal development, and then the competent newborn's physical development. In this lecture, we're going to talk about how we develop socially as babies and then into childhood. So in class the other day, we talked a little bit about stranger anxiety and how this can certainly be a cause for concern for both child and parent. But as I told you, it is absolutely developmentally appropriate to experience stranger anxiety. So this is essentially the fear of strangers that infants commonly have beginning by about the age of 8 months. So part of why there is stranger anxiety is this idea of attachment. We are, for the most part, attached to our parents, primarily our mothers, if she is the one who gives us most of the care. But let's talk a little bit about the origins of attachment before we get into how that's applied to everyday life. So a good definition of attachment is an emotional tie with another person. It's usually shown in young people by seeking closeness with their primary caregiver, and they show distress when they have separation with that caregiver. And again, it's usually our parents. If we have a mom or a dad that stays home with us most of the time, we certainly become attached to him or her. Now, Harry Harlow in the mid-1950s conducted research using baby monkeys, and it's really quite cute. This is a photograph from this research study. And he did lots of studies. Harlow's monkeys you will hear a lot about if you go on to study psychology in college. But this is a picture of the monkey. He's given a choice. What does he want to have? Does he get more attached to the mother that has the food to give him, or does he get more attached to the monkey that is sort of soft and cuddly, which you can see on the right-hand side? It's like this terry cloth material that's wrapped around. Now, right now, the monkey is sort of trying to feed off of the wire mother, but you can see that he is standing on the cloth mother in sort of like a pose that indicates that he's very comfortable sort of climbing on her or him. So in study after study with Harlow's monkeys, Harlow found out that time after time, the monkey preferred to be with and was attached to the cloth monkey. So this really shows us that attachment doesn't simply come from getting food from our caregiver. It comes from emotional bonding and cuddling and things like that. Also, in addition to the attachment discussion in terms of food versus cuddling, if you will, there's a couple of other different main ideas with attachment. So the familiarity idea, like who you are familiar with, whether that's your mother, your father, your grandmother who cares for you. When you're young, there are a couple of different ideas that go along with that. So your critical period is any time in human development in which something occurs so that the next step in maturation can occur. So critical periods are critical, if you will. The other piece is what we call imprinting. This is very popularly known when it comes to birds. Imprinting is the child, the baby, becomes attached to what he or she perceives is his or her mother. So a funny story about that, we had a student last year who, for their senior project in humanities, decided they were going to raise a duck. Well, the duck was shipped to the student before the duck had imprinted on his natural mother. So he ended up imprinting on the student who was raising him. So this doesn't just mean that you are attached emotionally to the mother, or in this case, to the student. It actually meant that the duck followed the student around from room to room to room. So she had no break from the duck ever. It's kind of funny, but the duck imprinted on her. So it can happen, and it does happen. So one thing that is connected to attachment is this idea of temperament. Temperament is essentially your emotional response to any situation that you come across, and we're sort of born with our temperament. So attachment and temperament was tested in Mary Ainsworth's famous strange situation research. Ainsworth almost always comes up on the AP exam as an aside, so you really want to make sure that you take down good notes on this. So Ainsworth's strange situation was studying what she called secure attachment versus insecure attachment. So I'm going to start off by saying right now that the secure attachment is the good thing. The insecure attachment is the not so good thing. Just get that straight right now. And then now I'm going to go into what each one of those means. So Mary Ainsworth put a child in a situation where they walk into a room with their mother, and then after a few minutes of playing and interacting, the mother then leaves. Once the mother leaves, the child is has a little bit of distress, but then begins exploring the area, the toys and the dolls and, all of that. And then when the mother returns, there's a little bit of, sort of distress, but then the child gets over it. They hug the mother, they kiss the mother, they have their sort of reunion, if you will, and then the child goes on to play. That is called the secure attachment. That is a healthy attachment to your parent. The insecure attachment is sort of the opposite. You're clinging to the mother. You don't want your mother to leave. The child does not feel comfortable once the mother leaves, cries the entire time, does not explore the environment, does not kind of go out on his or her own to look at the toys, to play with the dolls, to play with the other kids or adults in the room. When the mother returns, and this is key, when the mother returns, many times that same child has no interest in the mother and sort of shuns the mother, doesn't want to go near the mom. So this is an insecure attachment. This is an unhealthy attachment. I'm going to show you a video of a reproduction of Ainsworth's experiment in class tomorrow. So your temperament, as I said, we're all born with our temperament. And so there are 3 different types of temperament: easy, difficult, and slow to warm. Again, temperament is a person's normal characteristic emotional reaction and intensity in any given situation. So your easy temperament is you don't have a problem really kind of adjusting to new environments. So for example, if your mom took you to the mall, you see something that you're interested in, you sort of go off to that toy or that book or what have you without much hoopla. If you're difficult, you don't really like things. You don't really feel comfortable in a lot of situations. You might be uncomfortable and grumpy and not so easy to deal with in certain situations. And if you're slow to warm, you start off hesitant in new situations, but then slowly, as the phrase indicates, you warm up to the situation. I find that I'm slow to warm, as an aside. What are you? So we're going to be looking at someone named Erickson. He's a very famous, yes, that's his name. He's a very famous social psychologist who looked at our development from birth through old age, and he studied social development. But we'll look at that a little bit later. One of the pieces that he talks about is this idea of basic trust. He calls it trust versus mistrust. And this is a stage that we are in when we're babies. We don't have anybody to take care of us except for our parents. We can't do much for ourselves. So we have this sense of trust that our parents are going to show up when we need them. So we cry. We develop a really good sense of trust when our parents show up when we cry. If our parents don't show up when we cry, we sort of develop a sense of mistrust. Now, this gets very controversial because sometimes people, don't always want to respond right away to their baby because they feel like they're, kind of kowtowing to the baby's every needs, and is that really healthy to do, and things like that. But we will talk about more in depthly this theory when we get to Erickson. We'll look at his whole theory. What happens when we're deprived of attachment or emotional connection as babies? Now, this is a picture of orphans in Romania, and you can see they don't really look, healthy. They're all sort of crammed into this one bed, and it's very sad when you look at it. But when you have early deprivation of attachment, as did in these orphanages in the 1930s and 40s, it was really tough for these children to sort of develop healthy relationships as they grew older. So it is really important to give children that really sense of feeling attached and a healthy, secure attachment right from the get-go, right from when we're born. Does daycare ruin a child's attachment? Well, we'll talk about that in our next lecture. Take care.